Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. This week coming up is going to be Halloween. So this Tuesday, there's going to be lots of kids out there trick-or-treating. So happy Halloween to all the parents out there that's going to be taking their kids trick-or-treating. Make sure to stay warm and be safe. Although I have to say here in Ontario this weekend, it's been pretty warm. If you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I'd be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. We're going to be heading to Lorain County, Ohio. The date is October of 1987, and the nearest town is Oberlin. When I was 17 years old, I was out deer hunting with my bow and arrow. It was just starting to get dark out when I heard something moving about 200 yards away in the pine trees. A couple of minutes later, I heard 3 deep grunts. At first, I thought it was maybe a big buck grunting for a doe. But the more it kept grunting, the more I thought it was maybe a rabid dog. It was making a lot of noise as it came closer to the opening to cross to the other side of the pine trees. It stopped just a few feet from the opening to the path. It just didn't feel right, so I didn't even draw my bow. I remember grabbing my knife for protection. I was in a tree stand but kept thinking the rabid dog would bay me in the tree. After what seemed like forever, I heard the most blood-curdling scream as it jumped and crossed the opening path and into the other pine trees. All I remember was saying to myself, "Oh my God, it was on 2 legs." It took only 3 jumps to cross 20 feet. It was starting to get dark out and it was about 50 feet from me, so I couldn't tell the color or features. All I remember was that it was big and only on 2 legs. It kept screaming like a bobcat scream or a little child scream, and it was running fast into a big wooded area. I jumped from the tree and ran back to my house with tears in my eyes. My parents weren't home, so I ran to my neighbor's house and called him to the back porch. He heard the screaming and the animal breaking wood in the woods. He told me he has never heard anything like that ever. My parents ended up not believing me. In 1994, I met someone who lived in Lodi, Ohio. He said his family saw Bigfoot. I'm not sure about the time frame, but I think it was around the same time, maybe 1988 or 1989. He said that the TV show PM Magazine did an episode about it. I think he also said that the National Guard was also called out. The date was February of 2003. We're heading to Madison County, Ohio, and the nearest town is London. My girlfriend and I were driving home in the winter of 2003. We had several inches of snow, so we were moving slow. I was driving down State Route 56. I looked to the farm field on my left and noticed something walking along the creek. I slowed down to get a better look and asked my girlfriend if she could see what I was watching. She said yes. I pulled her truck over as far as I could and I got out. I walked across the road to get a better look. What we saw plain as day was covered in reddish-brown hair. It walked upright, had a conical-shaped head, long arms, stocky build, and was at least 6 feet tall. We watched this thing for several minutes until we had cars backed up. I got back into the truck and we turned off the road to the next left, where the creek crossed and the ditch turned into a small thicket, which is a direction that we both agreed without a doubt that the Bigfoot was heading. We waited till it got dark to see if anything came out. Nothing did. We went to both entrances of the farm field and saw no tracks of anything. I am an avid hunter and fisherman, and I have no doubt distinguishing camouflage from here at the distance the subject was from us, which was about 200 yards. We only recently told our family and close friends what we saw. This one took place on a Saturday in July of 2012. We're going to be going to Gogabec County, Michigan, and the nearest town is Watersmead. I was camping at the Clark Lake Campground in Sylvania Wilderness and went exploring the back roads of the Ottawa National Forest on a Saturday morning. I thought I'd go explore Langford Lake, Pomeroy Lake, and Moosehead Lake. I was driving towards Langford Lake Campground and I took US 2 from Watersmead and made a left turn onto CR 527. About halfway before I got to Langford Lake Road, I was shocked to see what looked to be a monkey with a bear's body right in front of the car. This being crossed a road right in front of the car. If I hadn't slammed on the brakes, I would have hit it. It was not a bear. I have seen tons of bears in both rural Michigan and rural Virginia over the past 30 years. Some while driving and some while hiking, some even face to face. This was not a bear. All I kept thinking to myself was, why is there a monkey in the woods? I was stunned and baffled and my mind just couldn't figure it out. It was like the very first time while in rural Virginia I saw a cougar up close and personal in our yard. My mind just couldn't comprehend. After the being crossed the road, I stopped the car and tried to look for it. There was a small gully on the left that it must have gone down into, but I couldn't see it. The brush was thick and I was still stunned. My mind couldn't make sense of it all. Here was this being, maybe 5 feet in length, dark black-brown, 4-footed, running on all fours, not running like a bear runs. I've seen that too, with its underbelly about 2 feet off the ground. Long and lean, it seemed to me, not running very fast but brisk. Of all the funny things in the world, it seemed to be smiling. It was not threatening at all. It seemed very innocent. No pointed head, eyes brown, no snout, not a furry face. It looked like it had a monkey's face, no tail. It all happened so fast and I wish I had been able to follow it once it crossed the road. This was not a bear cub. I have seen at least half a dozen of them in my life as well, climbing trees in the Adirondacks, crossing roads in central Virginia. I am still baffled to this day as to what this being was, although something in my gut tells me that I saw a baby Bigfoot. This last one takes place in September of 1982. We're going to Mecosta County, Michigan, and the nearest town is Mecosta. I've always wondered about an encounter that I had when I was in the 8th grade. I just recently found your site and for the first time listened to some of the screams you've posted. For the first time since that night, I feel like I've heard something similar to what happened that night. I had been out with friends and we were out running around playing Ding Dong Ditch and had finished our mischief for the night. It was probably around 10 or 10:30 and I needed to get home. I had lived in this area for 8 years or so, and I was very familiar with all the back trails and the ways to get around off the main, albeit dirt roads. The area I lived in was a resort carved out of a group of swampy lakes by a developer about 20 years before. It was fairly built up, but with large swaths of forest between many of the homes. In addition, since many of the homes were used as weekend and summer cottages, the area was sparsely populated from the early fall until the spring. I walked home alone that night, and at one point I had to make a decision about whether or not to follow the road or go up the path that would cut about 10 minutes off of my walk time. I knew I was running late and curfew was coming up soon, so I chose to go up a path which ran along a ridge to a low hill about 200 yards from a swampy lagoon off to one of the main lakes. I was pretty familiar with the pathway, now a full road, because I would take this in the daytime with my bike and occasionally stop to pick wild strawberries that grew there in abundance. I vividly remember stopping at the trailhead trying to see into the woods. There was no moon, and since this area was well away from any light source, it was pitch black. For some reason, I was a little jumpy about walking down the path tonight. I even remember walking about 10 yards down the trail and walking back out for some reason. I figured it was just because it was so dark, and I was just being jumpy unnecessarily, and walked in. The path was about 1/4 mile long, and at the end ran down a steep hill. My house was about 200 yards from the end of the trail and just on the other side of the finger of the lagoon off of the lake. About 3/4 mile way into the trail, I walked up on something. I'm not sure what, since I couldn't see anything. About 20 or 30 feet directly in front of me, there was a very loud, piercing scream that made me jump completely out of my skin. The scream was followed by a loud crashing as whatever it was ran down the hill, through the woods, towards the lake. Whatever it was covered the distance through the woods in only a couple of seconds and in very few bounds. Needless to say, I did not stick around and tore off down the trail, down the hill, and to my house as fast as I could. To this day, I don't know what I encountered. I still remember that the scream and the sound was very familiar to the sound of a woman's scream. It was very high-pitched and very loud. I have told myself several times and time again that I just walked up on a deer, but the scream did not seem like anything that would have come out of a deer. I'd love your opinion on what it is I ran across. I don't know what happened that night. I hope you all enjoyed these encounter stories today, and if these stories reminded you of an encounter that you may have had and would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story on this channel. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.